After all the rant-filled videos I've made lately about all the problems with Lofty, I'm sure some of you are wondering, like, why do I even bother, right? Why am I still on the site? And the answer is giant returns. And oh, what's up, YouTube? It's Joe Cacciapaglia sitting on the couch, making some money investing in fractional real estate online, as usual. So today I'm just going to tell you a little bit about a deal that I got some great returns on. I already mentioned buying this one in the what I bought this week video, but just wanted to share a little bit extra about it. I already sold. I'm going to show you some math on that and why. So one, I just always like to reiterate the opportunity, right? There's opportunity for really great returns if you're active, if you're paying attention to your downside risk. But I also want to just illustrate the importance of time. So one of the things that I think is really lost on everybody is, a 13% ROI over 3 days versus a, you know, 40% ROI over 3 weeks. Um, I would take the 13 over 3 days every single day. And so I'm going to show you some math on that. And so, because I think, sometimes people are like holding on to tokens, trying to eke out an extra little percent or hoping. And I think there's some people doing that on here. So let me just jump into, um, if you didn't see my other video. So this is a property, on Lofty. It was, the last time, it was vacant. We had sent somebody out to do an inspection. This was back in May. I think they changed out the lockbox maybe. And at that time, we got just a notice that, um, by the way, it looks like the house was on fire. And that actually, this little dip here corresponds to the first time there was a mention of that in the Discord. And this is one of the reasons it really shows that you need to be active in the Discord, because there's no mention about that here until like 3 days later. So the first one, it was, I think it was the 28th, but then, and that's where we had somebody sold off. Um, but it was a few days later where there was a discussion about, hey, we're going to try to um, get insurance and whatnot. And so I think I showed these pictures the other day, but it just, it looks like a total loss. And we actually have some more. Apparently, it was struck by lightning. Um, it's there's a yeah. This is not all the pictures. There's a whole bunch of pictures that show like that structural parts of the home seem to have burned. Um, and so they're thinking it's a total loss. Uh, got to go back to the 90. So yeah, one, I just wanted to point out, like you can see, oh, people sold there. What's interesting is some other people bought in. I think thinking that, okay, maybe we are going to get to make an insurance claim. There's, you can see discussion um, in the Discord about it, right? Like, oh, is there insurance? There was some nervousness about that, but it turns out there was. And we got some communication again, just in the Discord, nothing in the updates here uh, about. And again, that's why you just have to be paying attention to the Discord, because you wouldn't know a lot of what was transpiring. Um, and so we found out, okay, there's going to be $93,000 in proceeds uh, that the insurance company originally mentioned they'd give out. Now, what they're going to do is actually hire a public adjuster. It sounds like, see if they can get more than that. Um, and so this is when I bought, right? So I at this point in time, um, I bought in with fees and everything. It was $35.75. I think it's far enough back now, yeah, that you can't see them here. So it was before these purchases, because it was actually at 32 and change, but it shows up, once I add all the fees, it's 35. Um, but so I bought 10. I really like, if you look at this, I could have bought a lot more before it pushed the price up too high. And so I kind of think I made a mistake just sort of buying 10 and sitting on it. Um, this is one, I did done some quick math. The proceeds themselves ended up being about $42,000, or yeah, about $42 per token. And then, we still have the land and structure, but we also maybe have to demo it before we can sell it, or there might be some liability of just having it the way it is, or there's. So I just thought of that as okay, it's kind of a wash in my mind, right? Like maybe there's more money to be made, but maybe there's not. But the token price ended up getting up to $42 and change. And when you see these sales, these are actually net of fees. So this was me selling out. So I sold those 10 tokens. And so again, I mean, this is not a deal that I put a ton of money in. So I didn't make a lot of money, right? I made 46 bucks. I clearly could have done this transaction. And the price today is even higher, right? It's at 45. But I clearly could have done this transaction and bought at least 30 or 40 tokens, right? So this could have been 3 or 4 times as large. Um, I've mentioned this lots of times. I'm really still just playing with the site, really just experimenting. Um, it, so I never feel like I have to just take these big positions. I think over time, like this is one that was kind of interesting to me because there wasn't a ton of slippage, um, with some of these bigger buys, and so yeah, I could have bought more but didn't. Um, you know, but very short hold period, right? So I bought them on the 25th, sold them on the 28th. It's $46 in profit. That's a 13% ROI. But if you look at the IRR, it's 296 million percent. I mean, it's an absurd number, right? Obviously, that's assuming I'm going to just continue to turn that over every 3 days. Yeah, if you could do that and get a 13% return, and then the next one you do the bigger one, but obviously you can't actually do that because with slippage and everything, in going into the future, you'd end up having too large of deals, right? And this is one of the things I talk about. Like, there's the great potential for these percent returns, but they're not necessarily great, actual dollars. On this one, I think I probably could have done 3 or 4 times as much, and then if I had held out a couple more days, been able to sell. Uh, and there's been some other sales in between too. But like I said, I mean, today it's at 45, so I think there would have been the possibility to do that. Um, but not a huge amount of money, right? I mean, let's say it's 4 times as much. Well, it's still not even 1,500 bucks, right? Yeah, right around there, that you're putting in. But again, really, really good percent return. And 46 bucks while I'm sitting on my couch, and this took me hardly any time at all, right? I spent a lot more time talking about it than actually doing this trade, right? I did very little due diligence because we're not trying to do anything with the property, right? I want to make sure, like, okay, I wanted to check, do we have any debts that we have to pay for? Um, I have a little bit of experience, demoing properties like this, so I had some sense of, where I thought that was going to be. Um, but so, okay, there's been these people that have bought it up, and the price has moved a considerable amount. They could sell, but why not, right? This is the thing that I want to get into. Like, I think, you'll see me make a lot of these really short-term trades, and a big part of it is because I can continually, with the small amount of money I have on the platform, continually make all these little trades and have, almost every week found a place to reinvest the money. And some of it gets sort of stuck, and that's I think the problem, and that's where I won't get these massive returns. Aren't really going to materialize across the whole amount I have invested because like they end up getting put into something and it just sort of sits there. Like all the money I haven't owed them right now is just sitting there. Of course, I'm learning. In the future I'll have made a smaller bet on that one and not have bid up the price as much as I did. But anyway, what if? So there's a lot of people though that are like, oh well, we're going to get more money out of this, right? We're going to get over 50 bucks a token because the public adjuster is going to come in and help us, and we're going to sell the structure as is for something without having to do any demo. And so, okay, let's say that's true, right? Well, and I'm sort of ignoring the sale portion and just saying, okay, let's say we get 25% more proceeds after the public adjuster, right? Um, so that it ends up being about, all I did is take the amount that I sold for, multiplied it by, 1.25 to say it's okay, 25% more. Obviously I would have tripled my profit if that happens. The ROI, same thing, tripled. But my IRR, right, my annualized return, if I'm assuming this takes me 2 more weeks from now, or a little bit more than 2 more weeks, I picked a kind of random day. Um, but it's not going to happen instantly, right? So there's going to be some wait. Um, I think that realistically, it's going to take even longer before that money hits your wallet. But I figured even just doing this, creates a huge contrast, right? 296 million% return or 449,000% return if it takes us a couple weeks. I mean, either way, it's an unbelievably high return, right? And it's because, again, even this means that you could turn it over and then turn it over again and doing it several times in a year, and that's how you get that huge return. Now, again, not realistic because you end up running into problems with capital and having too much capital to get the sort of returns. But the point, there's two things that I want to really talk about with this issue. One is like the faster money, mathematically, you're just always going to get a better return if you turn it over, as long as you can continue finding those opportunities. But the other thing is, um, you know, it's possible that we don't do any better, right? Like we could wait some time and not make more money, right? And then also, uh, there's some risk that there's going to be, okay, somebody gets hurt, some kids go play in the burned down place, and there's some liability, or we get tied up in it for a very long period of time. Um, Obviously all that stuff, the hopefully we are still protected, and at the end of the day, you get your proceeds back. But let's say, we spend some time thinking about it. We get the public adjuster out there. Again, just a couple weeks go by, but we end up with just exactly the same amount of money that we have. Okay, so we still just made that return. And a lot of people think about this and be like, oh, well, we didn't really lose anything. Well, yes, you lost your ability to compound. I've already reinvested the funds that I took out of this. Now, are they going to turn over again at the same percent? Maybe not, but maybe, right? And so now we're all the way down to 1869 or 1869% return annualized, right? I mean, hugely different from the amount. And again, sometimes it does get like almost silly to think about XIRR because of, when you are using these really short time periods, because, I'm obviously not going to turn this over 100 times over the next year, right? Which is sort of or 110 times over the next year, which is kind of what the 3 days would imply, or 120 actually, right? Um, I'm not going to get to keep doing that, but the point is, I'm going to get to do it more, right, and more often. And so by holding it, one, there is some risk that I end up making less, right? Like it could get paid out. Um, I think it's really a low risk to make less, but there's definitely a risk that the time that we sit on it makes, really nerfs our return, um, in hopes that we get more. But like you just have to get so much more if you're going to hold it for, if your holding period goes from 3 days to 3 weeks, you just have to have an insane amount higher return to get a similar, um, annualized return. And I do think, like I said, I mean, even though I think it's silly to assume that you're going to truly annualize that, I think that in general, um, I would guess before this issue is resolved, I'll have turned that money over twice more, or maybe 3 times more, or I mean, I think there's the opportunity to do it quite a bit. And often when you do, like some of them will be lower, some of them will be higher on average. But it is, these opportunities just keep coming up to get these little deals. I think I showed one a couple of days ago where it was, in one of the liquidity pool videos, it was the property bought and sold the same day, and then was in and out of the liquidity pool in just a couple of days. I think that this sort of really short-term trading is where all of the very outsized returns are coming from on this platform. That and just staying really in the know, watching the Discord, jumping on this deal as soon as it said, as soon as I found out there was some info. And what's interesting, like if this was a stock market transaction, It's 100%. This would be like insider trading, right? Like it is like, I mean, it seems like it. Except that the Discord is open. It's information that is available to everybody that invested in the property, right? So that info is available. I just happen to be reading it right away and acting on it immediately. So I guess maybe it wouldn't even be if this were public, but it's a situation where it's just an inefficient market, right? Although after I bought, a lot of these other purchases happened very quickly afterwards, so and they did move the price up a little, right? So I bought before here, but then I think I was to purchase just before this one, and it was at like 32. I moved it up there, but I mean, look, I could have bought all of these all the way up to 36 and probably still sold out today at 45 and been okay. I mean, that's not a huge return because with fees, netting the fees on each side. Although these, I think these are on the buys. Yeah, I don't think these actually include the fees. They don't because mine looked like 35 even though it was like 32. So anyway, I think that there's like uh, that's the main point is just paying attention to that stuff is where you're really getting those opportunities. I could have taken advantage of it quite a bit more. I probably should have. Over time, I will if I keep playing with this stuff. But it's something that moving in and out very quickly is is just where I think, especially where it is only a small amount of money. It's the only way to sort of make the types of returns that make it worth it to invest with a small amount of money, right? Now, if this were something where I could put $10,000 in this deal and not move the price very much, well, then I wouldn't mind if it was a much thinner trade, because the return on time would be better. And again, even if you had made, even if you had made very thin percents, if you could do it all the time, um, you'd end up having still great annualized returns. Anyway, that's really all. I just wanted to because I have had like a lot of really negative videos about Lofty, and I do think they have a lot they need to take care of. But I wanted to just remind people why I am still on the platform, because there are every day I find little opportunities. Some of them are real quick trades like this one. Some of them are just properties that I think are just deeply discounted and might take a little longer, but I think that it'll be a pretty high yield as well. Um, and I don't know, I think that I don't think there's anything wrong with people that are holding this, um, thinking, maybe, although I sold 3 days ago now, maybe, even in that time period, that doubled the holding time, right? And so we don't really know anything new today. Whenever the money is in, there's still going to be a vote on what to do with it. I think realistically, you're just not getting that very quickly. So I don't know, but at the same time, I know I'm not going to turn it over. I haven't sold again. I did reinvest that money right away, but I haven't sold again, right? So it's not. So I'm not getting as many turnovers to really hit this crazy high return, um, at the same time. So it's not as if I think it's a huge mistake to still be holding this at this price point. But at the same time, like you never lose money by taking profits, right? Like you might not get as high of a return as you could have, but if every time you have a profitable trade, you go ahead and take it off the table and then look for your next opportunity, um, it's hard to lose money that way, right? But by the way, please like and subscribe. In the description to this video, I have a link to the Discord that I've set up that a whole bunch of us investors jump in and talk about real estate or fractional real estate investing on a regular basis. It's been pretty active lately. I really appreciate that. Um, there are also in the link in the description to this video, there are links to all the places I currently invest in fractional real estate online. Do your own due diligence on those platforms and on any properties that you see. Again, and the same thing with this, right? Just because I bought or sold this at the times that I did doesn't mean it's the right move. You want to do your own due diligence. I mean, obviously, it was a good move, right? It was a profitable trade for me, but like that's one more thing that I think that a lot of people really ignore is that it doesn't necessarily mean that it was still a good move. Even I believe this one objectively was because we got word that we were getting a certain amount of cash coming in. But in general, just because you make money on a trade or an investment, doesn't mean it was a good risk adjusted return, right? Because there's, you could have just gotten incredibly lucky that lots of things that should have gone wrong didn't go wrong, right? And so, I know it's kind of a weird concept. It's one that I hadn't really thought much about until I had read, some of Taleb's books where he talks about alternative histories, basically like, okay, different ways that things could have worked out, but didn't necessarily, right? And so, yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a weird aside, but it is thinking about like, okay, just because this did work out doesn't mean it was necessarily a good move. I think for the reasons I mentioned that this one was, but it also doesn't mean that selling right now was the right thing, right? Like even though yes, clearly holding on to it, I would nerf my XIRR quite a bit, even if I got even if we end up with 25% more proceeds. Um, a lot of the old school real estate investor guys would always say they'd always say you can't eat IRR, right? Meaning like they always just care about their cash flow, like because that's what keeps you alive and that's where the income comes from. So they'd always, I don't know, it's kind of a funny saying, but they'd always say you can't eat IRR, because back when I started in this business, using IRR was a as a newer metric, right? People hadn't been using it forever because it's hard to calculate by hand, right? Like so you have to have Excel. And as old as that makes me sound, Excel hadn't been around forever when I started, right? Like it was probably, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years old when I got first was exposed to finance. Could that be true? That makes me feel really old, but I don't know. But anyway, so it's something that IRR and especially XIRR, a lot of people look at really critically. I mean, this is part of the reason why because there's zero chance that I'm going to hit that return, right? Because I'm not going to turn this over 120 times. Um, but I might turn it over 50 times, right? Do 3 day trades, or have a 3 day trade, have a 5 day trade, have a like I mean I think that that's possible a lot, but on a small amount of money, right? I'm not able, like my whole amount that I have on the platform isn't getting turned over that often. So I don't know. I guess it's a trade-off. If any of you guys are real like deep finance nerds and you're tracking that, right? I am curious what you think about this one, because for me, it seems obvious. Well, the math makes it seem obvious that waiting for more proceeds doesn't make sense. But the reality of the situation is I don't, you're not, because XIRR always assumes, that you're able to reinvest at the, in the same type of deal over and over again. And obviously, um, this 3 day 13% ROI doesn't just continuously present itself. And so then, I don't know. So I'm curious how other people are looking at this. I know some people just completely ignore XIRR, don't try to annualize it, and are just looking at like, okay, what's my actual ROI on this deal? And I think that if I am comparing, 3 day deals to 2 week deals or 2 week deals to a couple month deals, stuff like that, where it's sort of similar, I think that kind of makes sense. But there are some of you that I know I've talked to quite a bit that are like in a property token that you've held on to for a year and a half, and you think it's going to be worth like $3 more or $7 more sometime next year. Um, and but you've already got this big move, and it's one that it's actually a property, some of them that I've been in and out of several times because the it swings wildly. um and so that's when like really thinking about the impact of the time value of money. uh I think a lot of people just start to miss that, right? Because they're saying, oh well, I'm going to have made a 40% ROI on it, you only made a 13%. But if you look at like, okay, how many other times I got to turn it over, um, the 13% is probably the better deal to take, right? Because, but again, because of the reality of it, and this is if this was happening over 2 months versus taking it now, I think it's a no-brainer and you just take it now. But if it's happening, if it means just holding it an extra week or two to get this extra pop, well, then I'm not sure, right? And that's where I sort of, um, sometimes math runs into the practical world in a way that doesn't work, right? Because a lot there's assumptions built into your XIRR formula, and that being that you can just continuously reinvest in the same exact type of deal, and that's not realistic, right? And so then I have to figure out, well, okay, and I guess this is the best way to really think about it is if I take it out now, what are my alternatives? Where can I put this versus leaving it in here and hoping this goes up a little bit more? Um, and like I said, I did already reinvest, and it's in something that I think is should do well, and we'll see. Um, I have to check in on it when this deal finally resolves, if I remember. I'll try to put a little reminder to myself to do that. But anyway, even if it doesn't, like that's the thing, one of the things I think people really get caught up in, like trying to maximize, like perfect everything, like make it like the absolute perfect deal. And it's like, this is one of the things that I don't care about at all. It's why it's like, okay, is this profitable? I made money. Let me move it to cash. I made the bulk of the money I think I'm going to, right? And maybe that's not true here. Maybe there really could be this big, but again, I mean, when I was doing this math, I was saying, okay, what if we get 25% more proceeds? Realistically, are we going to get 25% more? I don't think so. I mean, I haven't, I'm not involved in the situation enough to know, but a lot of times you go back and forth with your insurance company, you don't get anything extra, or you get a little bit extra. You get maybe 10%, 15. But if it, but there's the potential. I mean, this is covered up to, I think, 144,000 was the total coverage. So, maybe, which would be like more than 50% more than, or around 50% more than where we're at. Excuse me. So, maybe there is the potential for this to go up quite a bit. I think that for me, it seems like there's more hidden risk in it than there is um, upside at this point. I think that like I said, there's some chance it goes up, but I just don't really know. Uh, I do know that we'd have to wait to figure that out, and profit now is better than profit in the future, especially if it's the same amount. Um, but and then yeah, there is some chance that that number goes down somehow, right? That it turns out there's some new liabilities we didn't know about or something like that. Perfectly possible, right? And so, that's why I'm always quick to get out of these, especially when I see other opportunities on the platform, where I can put the money to work. Now, I didn't mean this to be a super long video, so it always happens. But one of the things I really wanted to mention, though, is like all this whole discussion is none of this is what like people think about when they think about, oh, I'm going to invest in real estate, right? Like this whole thing is like very much different from I'm just doing a buy and hold in a deal that makes a lot of sense. Um, it's again, this is the type of opportunity where I'm making money on Lofty. Uh, if you're looking for that like passive experience where I'm just looking for somebody else to really find the good deal, I'm going to do some due diligence to make sure they're not tricking me, but I'm just going to buy into that. They're going to basically run it for me, and I'm not going to have to be involved at all. That's what I think. I think Mogul's the better platform for that. Um, you won't make 296 million% annualized returns on any deal on Mogul. Um, it's just such a funny number. It's hilarious to see such a huge percent return, right? But it is like it. I think it's more what a lot of people think about when they think about real estate investing. Not all these weird little arbitrage opportunities. That's where I think Lofty is just really, is the land of opportunity. Is just like buying tokens for less than the property's worth, right? And this is one where it was just okay. It's buying a token for less than the cash that is due to the entity is worth. I mean, that's why it was a real no-brainer to me, and it's also why as soon as the token price got past that cash dollar amount, I just decided let me just take the profits now. Um, anyway, I'm going to just stop going on about this. Uh, if you've done trades like this, I'd be interested to hear, what's the weirdest way you've made money on Lofty so far? What's the weirdest situation? Or, feel free to jump in and tell me the weirdest way you've lost as well. Either comment in this video, jump to the Discord, we can talk about it. I really have appreciated you guys just jumping in, starting discussions based on these videos. It's really all I want, right? I think that, we're going to do better as a community if we can share a lot of info and help each other. I don't know, I felt like there was a whole bunch of that going on today, and I appreciate it. So anyway, until next time, I'm going to keep making mistakes so that you don't have to.